Today, the Biden administration considers litigation against GOP governors who sent migrants to Democrat cities. Facebook partnered with the FBI to spy on Americans' private messages, and Don Lemon denies he has been demoted over at CNN. We've got all of that and more coming up, and it all starts right now. Welcome to the news and why it matters. Happy Friday. I am Sarah Gonzalez, and I am joined by BlazeTV contributors, both Eric July, who is founder and owner of Rippaverse Comics, and John Doyle, who is host of Heck Off Commie. Eric, are you still you subscribe to John? Okay, by the way, but are you still posting any content?
I've been bad with it.
Yeah, when you become a millionaire, it's hard to find time to post.
Like even this, like I'm only wearing art material because I was at the warehouse working. I wear tank tops and stuff. I was like, well, I can't go to the show with, not this show at least, with that. So I was like, I need some clothes. All right, well, let's just grab our own stuff.
That's so funny.
So that's why I'm Rippaverse out.
I was going to say, also, you just should be, because you should be promoting your own stuff.
I guess that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah, so everyone make sure to check that out as well. So we discussed yesterday Ron DeSantis' epic move. Of course, Texas Governor Greg Abbott has been doing it as well. But busing these particular migrants, 50 migrants, he sent to Martha's Vineyard. 50. I just want to make that clear. Because when I start going over all of the reaction from this community, you may think that it's something like Eagle Pass or McAllen or something like that. 50 migrants were sent to Martha's Vineyard. And originally, yesterday, we heard, we saw some pictures of the Martha's Vineyard community rallying together, and they were grabbing supplies, and they were feeding these poor migrants, illegal immigrants. And it didn't take long for the migrants to board buses to Cape Cod. So here it is this morning. The illegal immigrants were turned away. They were deported from Martha's Vineyard. That is a fascinating update to this story. I guess it just turned out that in order for the left to find deportation to be an okay thing to do, justified, all we needed to do was make sure that these illegal immigrants showed up in their backyard.
Well, and even some of the leftists that are upset at that are obviously referring to immigration law as far as why they have a problem with this. Now all of a sudden they're fans of this, saying, well, crossing these migrants across state lines, there's got to be some sort of federal law that's being broken here, which is what they're trying to appeal to now. But no, this is just one of those standard cases of people that talk about this issue of immigration, definitely as it pertains to demographic changes and different culture, let's say incompatibility, they talk about it from a distance. And it's always been that way. They don't live in these areas that are usually impacted. So it's one thing for a day or two, but then it goes on and you're like, okay, this is uncomfortable, or I don't like this. And that is to be expected. But when you live definitely when you're up north and you don't really experience it like we do, let's say out in Texas, and really the most, I guess, eye-opening thing for me was when I was living in South Texas and seeing some of that shift happen. I was like, all right, there's something to this certainly here. But it's hilarious watching this these folks try to appeal to be it federal law and immigration law, and all of a sudden that they want to enforce because they don't like those folks being anywhere near them. But we knew that.
Mm-hmm. Well, unless they're cleaning their houses. Or mowing their lawns or something. Then they're okay, but not these.
Yeah, they had 24 hours where they had a photo op, so they could be like, oh my God, we're just such nice people over here at Martha's Vineyard. And then immediately after, they're like, okay, time to go. And they gave them clothing, I guess, and it's what is some immigrant going to wear a shirt that says Vineyard Vines or whatever they're wearing over there, or they were feeding them, but of course the food that they were giving them was American food, so highly processed sugar cereals, or oh, I don't know, what do brown people eat? And they're just giving them total crap, not actual nutritious and healthy food. And then once they played homemaker, then they're like, okay, now it's probably time to go out of there. So I like that instance of it because I like it when people I don't like are upset. but I'm not in love with the whole idea of like playing ping pong with immigrants and stuff. What I wish would have happened was I wish that Ron DeSantis would actually have bussed them back to Texas to tell Greg Abbott, like, hey, this is your problem. You're the governor of the state that's, has the most of these people coming in other than Arizona and New Mexico. Like, why don't you do something about this? But that probably wouldn't have been good for either of their, sort of
What I would
careers.
like is if he just bust them all the way back through Texas, all the way back across the border, where they came from, and said, well, it's your problem, Mexico, because you're the ones who let them through to begin with. So I want to, there's more to unpack here with this border saga, but I want to show you, there are a Facebook group that was all Martha's Vineyard community members. And there was a gentleman on Twitter who was screenshotting these comments, these conversations, and just, it is amazing the level, the lack of self-awareness, I should say, that these people have. Here's a good old Carol who says, I can't believe they delivered these poor people to one of the most expensive places to live. My heart goes out to them and to the islanders that will have to do some serious work here. The only good is that they at least will be treated with kindness on the island for, of course, the less than 24 hours that they stay there. That's so mean of them to send these poor people to a really nice area, this really remote place where they have great scenery and that's horrible. Here's Deb, who said that they set up a GoFundMe. There's a fund that's going to be set up to help some of the Venezuelans get transport to family members in other states and for anything else they may need, which, of course, means get them the hell out of our city. We don't want them here. Here is, let's see, Leslie, who says these immigrants were meant to be sent in Boston, where social services had been contacted and were preparing for their arrival. And Lindsay responds, why not keep them? Show the world what opening your home looks like, eye for an eye. And Leslie says the wonderful Martha's Vineyard community has welcomed them with open arms. Oh, except they're already gone. So that was short-lived. So look, I wanna unpack here. Eric, you mentioned, here's one more. Deborah, do you need anyone to help in the evenings? Where can clothing be given to them? Can we just come and give them nice clothing? As John pointed out, that's not gonna solve that.
Yeah,
can we just dump our secondhand clothes on that? Do they want, I can give them something Gucci, and then can I just wipe my hands of it and feel like my conscience is clear? We helped them. We helped those poor little immigrants. Now they can run along, go somewhere else, please.
They don't have the knowledge or probably even the inclination to maintain nicer quality leather goods or clothing. And secondly, too, they're probably just gonna fight over it. If they recognize the brand, they might just get into some sort of altercation over it, and then it's what really was solved there?
Yeah, that's actually a great point. So I want to, Eric, you mentioned the problem in these border towns, in these border communities that just, it seems like all of these leftist elitists have not yet recognized. I want to play video from Fox. They flew a night drone over Eagle Pass, Texas, which caught thermal imaging of immigrants crossing into Eagle Pass this morning. Now, within 2 hours, they saw 3 large groups totaling 500 plus crossing illegally into 3 different spots. That is just within 2 hours. And there have been 450,000 plus illegal crossings in that particular sector so far this year. Even then, Karine Jean-Pierre was asked yesterday about whether she thinks voters feel like they're being lied to about the border being secure. And she, again, attempted to blame the Trump administration for the crisis. Now, remember, this is the same Trump administration who had the return to Mexico policy that Joe Biden completely reversed, as all of the other Trump policies. And Karine Jean-Pierre says, no, look, this is Trump's crisis. Watch.
Isn't there some risk, though, that voters might feel like they're being lied to? When we're seeing images of, in El Paso, they've released 1,000 migrants on the street because the processing centers are overwhelmed there. How is that humane? How is that safe, as you guys talk about so often, when it's overwhelming border cities, and they're asking the Biden administration to reimburse them for charter buses to get them out of the area because they're totally overwhelmed?
So again, it is a broken system, the immigration system, and it was decimated by the last administration. That is a fact. It was decimated by the last administration. What the last administration wanted was a border wall that was ineffective.
Which I wonder why then the Biden administration quietly continued construction of the border wall if it was so ineffective. Karine Jean-Pierre later in this particular press conference shifted blame to Texas Governor Ted Cruz. Watch.
Republican governors interfering in that process and using migrants as political pawns is shameful, is reckless, and just plain wrong. And remember, these are people who are fleeing communism, who are fleeing hardship. And if these governors truly care about border security, they should ask Texas Governor Ted Cruz and Florida Senators Marco Rubio and Rick Scott why they voted against the president's request for record funding for the Department of Homeland Security.
I think this is news to Ted Cruz, who had no idea that he was Texas governor this whole time. Sorry about that, Greg Abbott. It's just so frustrating to hear these people. You heard it from Karine Jean-Pierre. You heard it from, I believe, Whoopi Goldberg, and so many people in the mainstream media that these poor people are being used as political pawns. And it's like, yes, they've been used as political pawns by you guys for decades upon decades. That is true. Let's agree on that. They are political pawns. You guys are the ones who decided to use them as a bargaining chip and promise them the sun, the moon, and the stars if they would just walk illegally across the border. And now you're forced to have to suffer the consequences of your own policies and your own advocacies. Yes, they are political pawns. You're the ones who created that game.
No, that's so true. My thing about this, and I guess this is the more interesting, I think I talked about this last time I was here, or rather the last time we had discussed the whole immigration thing, and that it frustrates me because so many folks, we discuss this issue with immigration. I mean, libertarians, often fellow libertarians, get this wrong as well, because a lot of them are Beltway and they're up there in D.C. and they have no idea what's going on. My biggest thing is, definitely as a libertarian who wants some form of voluntarism, I don't like the idea of creating conflict, right? And that's what the part where, again, leftists know they get it wrong. Libertarians, unfortunately, a lot of them are naive on this subject matter because they haven't never experienced it. Even if we set aside whether it be the morality of immigration in itself, whether you let someone cross this line or versus not, the cultural part is the part that I differ from. And that's where you have people that are culturally incompatible. I've never agreed with this idea of kumbaya. Everybody's the same. Everybody's, can get along just fine. That is simply not true. It has never been true. And I say this as a person that grew up in South Dallas, where, and I don't know if y'all did this where y'all was from, black folk and Mexican folks had a fight at the beginning of the year where we would just beef and nobody knew why. It was the blacks versus Mexicans fight in South Denton, Oak Cliff area. Now, I'm not saying that this is what this is to that degree. I'm just showing that when you have a culture shock, which is historically happened, this has happened all across the world or across humanity, where you have this huge influx of people of a certain demographic, it doesn't mean that they hate each other. They may be just culturally incompatible. And in that, where you force them, which is why the whole open border, which is basically government letting people in, or not even them, they more so bust people in. Definitely when you consider like the refugee program, that's literally what it does. This isn't some free form of immigration. No, it's the government saying, hey, and we're going to use your taxpayer dollars to do this. But they do that, and what happens out of that, even if it manifests, if it's one of those things that have to marinate, you are going to create conflict because those cultures are incompatible. How do you deal with that? There's not a law or anything that they're going to put in place that is going to deal with that problem. It's just the people that are in those geographical areas. And I encourage you all to talk to folks that are especially in South Texas, people that are also in often cases Hispanic that live there that have to deal with this bull crap and see it, firsthand. It's a fundamental problem, and I hate that the way they talk about immigration, what it does is it encourages that conflict, and everybody loses there.
Yeah, John.
I think that's a fantastic set of points that he just made. I mean, virtually until I think 1990 or even 1965, I should say, this country was biracial. We had white people and we had black people. That's always been the history of this country. And all the immigration that happened through, Ellis Island and up until 1965 was from Northern Europe and Western Europe. And those cultures are much more easily able to assimilate to American culture than people coming from Latin America. And we're taught, and these people really do believe, that their culture can be reduced to that which can be sold to you at a street festival. So like Hispanic culture is just, you know, the music and the dancing and the food and the art. And it's like, okay, well, when you get into attitudes about things like, you know, family and religion and work ethic and, you know, how countries ought to be structured, it's like you're literally importing 60 million people from Latin America since 1965. And you look at the way that those countries function, and now our country is starting to kind of look like that, and we're like scratching our heads like, why did this happen? Like virtually all of our population growth since 1965, which is when we had the Hart-Celler Immigration Act, which I think Ted Kennedy called the greatest gift to the Democrat Party from JFK. Like all of our population growth has been from immigration. And so the country's starting to feel less like America because it is less like America. You know, you go into Hispanic communities or you go into Indian communities or Asian communities, you're not seeing like, you know, white picket fences and apple pie, but then replaced with maybe the picket fences painted in a way that's more appropriate with their art style, or instead of an apple pie, it's like, you know, who was it that recently called that, like compared them to tacos or something?
Oh, yeah.
Joe Biden, breakfast tacos?
Something like that. Instead of an apple pie, it's breakfast tacos. It looks like Mexico. And it looks like India, and then you just have these this kind of like archipelago of these different communities within America, and that's just not conducive to like having an actual cohesive national identity.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with both of you. And I know we got to take a break, but just to wrap this particular topic up, Gavin Newsom has asked the DOJ, the Department of Justice, to consider kidnapping charges after the GOP governors have shipped their illegal immigrants out of state. And Joe Biden has also, the Biden administration is meeting today to consider litigation options against Republican governors sending illegal immigrants from the border to Democrat cities. By the way, I just want to just a reminder, these Democrat cities, I'm not sure about Martha's Vineyard, but all of these, you know, Chicago, New York City, these other places, they haven't said we are sanctuary cities. So the Republican governors literally are just shipping these people to the places who have said, we will help you. We want you here. Please come. Oh, we didn't think you'd actually do it. So we will continue to keep you updated on that. We got to take a quick break. First, we want to thank our sponsor, Bonner Wines. So you guys, if you guys have not yet tried these extreme altitude wines from Bonner Wines, you have to order them. All right. This is, they've got a bunch of Malbecs, and the thing that's different about their wines is, number one, you're not going to have all the gross chemicals and dyes and stuff that they typically include in all of those store-bought wines that you might purchase at the grocery store when you're just out and you're like, oh, crap, I need wine for dinner. No. These are made deep in the Andes Mountains. They make a very, very limited quantity, and you wouldn't understand what a difference the extreme altitude makes until you taste one, and then you're going to be like, oh, now I get it. We've got an amazing offer that we've never had before. If you visit BonnerPrivateWines.com/Y, you are not only going to get wine for over 50% off plus free shipping, you're also going to get a bonus bottle of small batch limited production wine from their exclusive wine cellar. That is 4 bottles for the price of 3. It is the best deal we've ever offered. You got to go there now. It is BonnerPrivateWines.com/Y to claim that bonus bottle. That is BonnerPrivateWines.com/Y. Prosecutors have scrutinized former FBI Special Agent Charles McGonigal, who was appointed to run the Counterintelligence Division of the FBI field office in New York City. This was back in October of 2016. He was key in the launch of the FBI Operation Crossfire Hurricane, which was, if you guys don't recall, they were alleging the Trump's campaign ties to Russia. That was what all that was about. I know it's hard because you get all of your corrupt FBI operations confused. And so I just wanted to, just as a brief reminder there. So prosecutors were scrutinizing his alleged dealings with a top aide to Russian oligarch Deripaska. And McGonigal was one of the first FBI officials to hear allegations that a Trump campaign official had told an Australian diplomat that the Russians had damaging information on Hillary Clinton. The allegations were later to be believed about the WikiLeaks hack of the Democratic National Committee, which, of course, released emails from the Clinton campaign as well. Also, while McGonigal was in D.C., the Bureau began receiving briefings from Christopher Steele, former British spy Christopher Steele, who we all know, the Steele dossier, the infamous Steele dossier, on reports he was drafting that would eventually become what we know as the now discredited Steele dossier. On October 4th, 2016, the FBI announced that then-Director James Comey had promoted McGonigal to head the Counterintelligence Division in the New York City field office. So, again, we hear more and more about all of these people within the FBI who have these ties to, I mean, we just reported earlier this week that the FBI was paying an informant who they believed previously to have ties to Russia. They weren't really sure. Then he gave them information that they knew was false. And after those two things happened, they decided that they would make him a paid confidential human source to spy on Donald Trump. Now we're hearing again this other guy who was involved in Crossfire Hurricane, scrutinized over alleged Russia ties. It's almost like they're the baddies.
Well, or they're just doing what they accuse everybody else certainly of doing. This whole FBI, it's not just with the FBI, and I'm not saying this is as a libertarian. I just don't understand the appeal, or why. Let me say this. I don't understand why there isn't some, especially after this kind of full-fledged, very aggressive approach by way of these Republicans, if you will, to get these organizations or institutions, whatever you want to call them, eliminated. Because it's every given turn, it seems like they're actively working against you. And then lying about it. And then saying hey, what are you going to do about it? Yeah, we lied or we're spying on you or we're kind of playing one side of the fence here. Who cares? What are you going to do about it? And then, it's in the news for a little bit and maybe one senator will say, all right, maybe it shouldn't be there. And then we just kind of move on. I'm like, I don't know. Tinfoil hat, I think they're all in on it. But seriously, I don't understand why there isn't some aggressive kind of approach by way of the especially senators and members of the House that are Republicans to try to legitimately get rid of this.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's crazy how much money we waste, literally giving it to people who are just going to use it against us. Whereas I found this, I didn't know this because I don't really know a whole lot, but I found out that the operating budget of ICE is $8 billion annually. That's 1/5 of what we gave to Ukraine, and only 30% of that actually made it to where it was supposed to go. $8 billion. Can you imagine? And $4 billion for the wall. And then can you imagine we double, triple the budget? We could actually have mass deportations. We could actually have a competent militarized border that was actually secure and sealed. But instead we just go piss it away, literally, on all these other countries, all of these bureaucracies that are just going to investigate pillow salesmen. And we tell ourselves that this is why Washington crossed the Delaware. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So speaking of the FBI and all of these alphabet agencies that just need to be completely, just set it on fire and burn it all down. And then maybe we can figure out if we want to even rebuild it. But in the Mar-a-Lago saga, yesterday, Federal District Judge Eileen Cannon denied 2 requests that the Department of Justice had made last Thursday. First, that the DOJ be allowed to resume reviewing allegedly classified documents seized by the FBI in its August 8th Mar-a-Lago raid. And second, that no neutral third party be brought on to vet these same documents. She said the court does not find it appropriate to accept the government's conclusions on these important and disputed issues without further review by a neutral third party in an expedited and orderly fashion. It's just interesting because as you're watching this play out and you're watching the Trump team push and push and push for an independent investigation. The Trump team alleged that certain things were mishandled, that the FBI did not, follow through with this appropriately or legally. And then you watch the DOJ's actions, and, you would think if you were dealing with a transparent agency that was telling the truth, they wouldn't continue to try to block all of these attempts at an independent investigation, all of these attempts to make sure that everything was legally done. And so, it just makes you wonder who's telling the truth in this. But at least for now, veteran federal judge Raymond Dearie has been named special master in this particular case. So he will review all of these documents seized in the FBI search on Mar-a-Lago. So look, I don't know much about this judge, and I have not had a chance to dig into the details before the time of this taping. I will say Jenna Ellis, we all know, is a very, very close confidant of Donald Trump. I did see an interview with her where she said, this is a great pick. This is a great match. We're very pleased with the pick of Judge Raymond Dearie. So, gentlemen, your thoughts?
I'd figure if it was something that was, they were really going to get him on, something would have already been done. I don't know if it's just a kind of smoke and mirrors kind of situation here where we're like, hey, we just want to try to derail maybe any sort of effort of him running again. I don't know what exactly
Well, let me give you an analogy here.
Yeah.
Ken Paxton here in Texas. He was indicted how many years ago? And people still keep using it as it's like, right, he's been indicted for how many years and nobody's done anything yet. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, and that's what I'm thinking. We're going to have another case of that. And it's like, hey, they can continue to mention that, hey, this thing happened or this raid happened. And therefore, that means you're criminal. But that if you haven't necessarily acted upon that, what does that actually amount to? Well, really nothing. It's more of optics. And that's what I will give leftists, particularly, whether they're using the government or not. They're very, very good at that part of it, because it's not necessarily about truth or reason or logic or facts or they don't really care about that. It's more, how does this look to the stupid people that we're trying to appeal to?
John, last word.
I think that they're probably just trying to put pressure on the GOP to, I want to use the word cuck, to cuck on Trump and to be like, oh, we need somebody less problematic, if he's indicted. But if he's indicted, I mean, that's just going to help his martyr status. That's going to just further aggrandize the base, make them double down, because there's a certain conversation that one has to have with oneself before they decide to support Donald Trump. And you have to just kind of make the concession of okay, look, this guy is a billionaire Playboy reality TV star. He's not exactly going to be the cleanest whistle. However, he's the man who can get things done, or at least can lead people in the right direction. And people say that, DeSantis is a better governor than Trump. George Bush was a better governor than Trump. I mean, that doesn't exactly, I think what's important is who's a leader. And because of Donald Trump descending the golden escalator, he broke through what was a virtual consensus for decades of what the right was talking about. The only reason we're talking about the things that we are now is because of Donald Trump. And for that reason alone, I think that he's still the guy.
All right. Well, we've got more to come. First, we want to thank our sponsor, Sweatblock. So Sweatblock is there for those of you who maybe get a little sweaty, maybe a little bit too sweaty under the arms, and then you have the embarrassing wet spots under your arms, and you just don't like going out in public because it's really awkward and embarrassing. You got to try the Sweatblock wipes. They are applied at night, and they will protect you from all of that embarrassing sweat for up to 7 days. I know it works. Let me tell you why. Because my husband is one of those very sweaty people under the arms, and he has been using them. He was using them. He started in the middle of Texas summer, and I saw the difference. He saw the difference, and look, he has been saved from those embarrassing stains. So you got to also try the deodorant stick. It's all really great. You can get it all today for 20% off over at sweatblock.com with promo code NEWS. That is sweatblock.com, promo code NEWS. Pete Buttigieg appeared on CNBC this morning and was asked why the administration has been celebrating inflation reduction. You recall earlier Joe Biden celebrated the passing of the Inflation Reduction Act, which actually they haven't said how it reduces inflation, and all of the reports that have come out have shown that it does nothing to actually reduce inflation right now. And so he was asked, why are you guys celebrating inflation reduction while so many Americans are out there suffering? Watch.
What you're telling me, so just stick to the script. The economy is great. The border is secure. Our cities are safe. Wouldn't it be
one's
better,
pretending all
wouldn't
of
it be
our
better
problems
to
are
just
solved.
be honest? Wouldn't it be better to just be honest with the American people about the soup that we're in right now, and we can all try to deal with it together instead of just...
Nobody's saying we don't have any problems, but if you don't pause and recognize the meaning of one of the most significant pieces of legislation so far in the 21st century, just because we also have a lot of other problems we're contending with as a country, then I think you're really feeding into a narrative that's pulling America down and holding America back.
All right, look, Pocket Pete, here's the thing. So if you guys recall, whenever they were talking about this Inflation Reduction Act, before they actually ended up passing it, they kept being asked, what is this going to do to reduce inflation? And the only answer that they could provide was some sort of spun narrative about climate change and how this was going to help make things more green, how they were going to get more electric cars, electric powered items, because the entire thing was about green energy and not actually about reducing inflation. And now, of course, we have Pete Buttigieg telling you, don't believe your eyes and ears. Believe me, because I know better than you.
They historically have done this where they will title a bill or whatever it is in a way that stupid people, particularly Americans, will look at that and say, well, if you don't support that or you don't want your representative to then go support this, then you must be against this thing.
Affordable Care Act.
Exactly that, or this anti-lynching bill, and lynching is already illegal in this country. What you want to be against, and they put all of this stuff in these bills. Often has nothing to do with it. But to be fair, that's what every bill, no matter what it is, they always throw stuff in it, spending money, lining up the pockets of themselves and certainly their cronies. But yeah, to be honest with the American people, would tell them that hey, well, there ain't nothing that we can do in terms of what we're passing unless it's going to be abolishing of the, be it the Federal Reserve or anything like that, which they're not going to, that's not even on the table. And I don't, this is the part, I guess, I don't want to be doom and gloom, but, you know, people are going to look at this and how can you as an American see your prices of virtually everything going in the direction that they're going in? After even something like that's passed, but just see that it's going in the direction that they're going in and still believe some idiot paying lip service to some bill saying that, well, it's going to then fix the problem. And I don't want to believe, because I don't think, to be fair, I've actually talked to people. I've talked to many dumb people, make no mistake, but not someone that thinks, hey, passing this bill, is it going to make your money, which is basically, we're talking about inflation reduction. You're talking about your money going a longer way. You having increased some sort of set of buying power. Do you actually believe that? I haven't personally spoke with anybody that believes that, but I have to believe that there are actually people that are, and that's the scary part.
Yeah, I agree, John.
I don't like the way he framed it as like, of course the country has problems, like as if this were just day-to-day problems, like if it were a house, you know, we need a new hot water heater, you know, damn it, you know, Timmy put his foot through the drywall, just stuff like this. You're talking about like the house is on fire and it's also being shot at and robbed at the same time. Like this is like not good. Any metric by which you would try to measure like a civilization that you would want to live in and raise a family in, we're like going way down. And it's because of their policies. And I'm young enough to where, you know, I've always kind of thought about like liberals are dumb. They don't know how to do anything. But I was kind of like in the back of my mind, like, what if I'm wrong? And then you see it all play out when you have the most liberal administration in the country's history and you're, you know, kind of like smug about it. But then it's also like you want to cry because it's like everything's going down the toilet. So it's bittersweet.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit afraid to bring this next one up because I'm afraid Eric's head is going to explode. But during a speech yesterday, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said that, quote, adequately funding the IRS is core to our success. She was, of course, referring to the Biden administration's effort to provide the IRS with an additional $80 billion raise and, of course, the hiring of 87,000 new IRS agents. She said it raises the revenue for us to make important investments in our economic strength. It makes sure that all Americans are playing by the same rules. It avoids misallocation of resources in the economy at large, and it does so by deterring taxpayers from shifting their activities towards more opaque sources or engaging in tax evasion.
First of all, tax evasion is a very noble cause. I'm not saying that I would do it here on TV. I'd never do that. But tax evasion as well as tax avoidance, whatever you want to call it, is a very noble thing because you're not giving your money to a bunch of warmongering criminals that spend it frivolously and just, you know, piss the money away, as we were talking about in the last segment. This is something that really, I was close. This is something that for sure aggravates me. And I say this as a man that has now crossed into a new tax bracket. And I'm looking at like the fact that they are investing all this money in people that, of course, are going to come try to criminalize me, or it's a stick up effectively in trying to get me for as much money as they possibly can. And for them to try to word it in a way that somehow it helps the regular person or helps American people is absolute nonsense. If you actually wanted to help the American people, first of all, you quit your job, light the IRS on fire, get the hell up out of there. Actually, no, stay in there because that's where you belong. Janet Yellen's one of the biggest criminals in this country has certainly ever seen, along with everybody else in terms of be it the IRS or the Federal Reserve or all those quacks. But seriously, like when I look at I'm making the dollars make sense when I'm making business decisions. And a lot of my business decisions are, how do I get more people to help me make more money? These are good paying jobs for individuals that want those good paying jobs. Well, I can't justify that spending if I'm being stolen from more. And that's where certainly the broke leftist will never understand it. But there's also these folks that consider themselves as part of the upper echelon of society that act as if that the economy is some sort of thing that they could try to manipulate and like talking about transparency and opaqueness and having people incentivized to go to this side of the market. That's all nonsense. If you actually wanted to help American people, quit.
John.
He's right.
Oh, no.
Don't die on me, man.
Yeah.
He's right.
Are you about to cry?
No, it was beautiful, but it's true. You can't tax a nation into prosperity. And if you look at, like, we always talk about, the 1950s or whatever, they weren't paying taxes, and they'll say, oh, the top tax bracket was like 90%. The effective tax rate was like more or less the same. No one was ever getting taxed 90% at the higher incomes. That's just ridiculous. And yeah, even if you look, and I would love to see like a right-wing think tank come out with this figure. Maybe it exists and I just haven't seen it, but like the amount that even like a reasonable person in terms of like, okay, well, we probably do have to pay for that, not even getting into like, my roads and things like that. But like how much is weight? I would bet that it's over 50% is just pissed away. Like not even that the average American's not going to see in their day-to-day, probably even their lifetime, that money ever actually working for them, I would bet that it's never even seen because half of it is just gone.
I would say probably on the upper, like even if I conceded, like from a minarchy standpoint, military, even if I gave you your punk ass roads or anything, even if I gave you that, if we sat up there and said, okay, this money is going to be reserved to take care of those things you said we just absolutely have to have, it would not come on the upwards of multiple trillions of dollars that they spend yearly. So it's being peed away no matter where you are at on a political spectrum. It's still being peed away. And I feel like that should frustrate anybody, no matter where you're at, as I'm dropping all stuff. That's just what the IRS that got me doing, throwing stuff all over the damn set.
All right. If you are watching this on YouTube, you may want to switch over to BlazeTV for this next block. We are talking about Facebook spying on private messages about the 2020 election, and the conversation might not be safe for YouTube. We'll see you there. All right, this is a lot of information, but it all is very, very important for you to hear. So according to sources within the Department of Justice, Facebook has been spying on the private messages and data of American users and reporting them to the FBI if they express anti-government or anti-authority sentiments or question the 2020 election. So under this FBI operation, someone at Facebook would red flag these subversive, supposedly private messages and then transmit them in redacted form to the Domestic Terrorism Operational Unit at FBI headquarters without a subpoena. It was done outside of the legal process and without probable cause, according to someone speaking on condition of anonymity. Facebook provides the FBI with private conversations which are protected by the First Amendment without any subpoena. And then, of course, the private messages have been farmed out as leads to FBI field offices around the country, which would subsequently request subpoenas from the U.S. Attorney's Office in their district to officially obtain the private conversations that Facebook had already, in fact, shown them. The Facebook users whose private communications Facebook had red flagged as domestic terrorism were all, quote, conservative right-wing individuals, end quote. From one of the sources, they say they were gun-toting, red-blooded Americans who were angry after the election and shooting off their mouths and talking about staging protests. There was nothing criminal, nothing about violence or massacring or assassinating anyone.
Oh, FBI has really led the show, huh? And all the stuff, the weird
I feel like
today.
the last couple weeks.
Yeah, true. That's very true. Look, it's kind of weird how if you look into some of these like terms of service and some of these laws, even like with the information, the data that they have on you. I mean, it's technically all these companies that are, they get your data, they sell it off. But definitely when you're dealing with government, some of that stuff isn't necessarily legal. But I feel like they'll still certainly do that. I know I have to be on multiple lists if the requirement was just anti-government and anti-authority sentiments. I've expressed a whole hell of a lot of those.
Oh, we're all going to the
I don't know how many. I guess that's more of the accurate question. How many lists? And I have to be on there. I haven't got visited, at least not to my knowledge.
Yeah, not yet.
True. Might be one outside.
Don't invite them, John.
I think people should just get off Facebook, honestly. Like it's
not just Facebook, though.
It wasn't?
Well, I'm just saying, generally speaking, we've heard this. I mean, it's all of social media, and the FBI is coming after all of us. Well, and if not the FBI, then Joe Biden himself.
Somebody.
Yeah, I mean, they're all like you have been completely dehumanized by the party in power.
That is true. I was kicked off Twitter, which is An egregious human, probably the greatest political tragedy of the 21st century so far, me getting kicked off Twitter. But I mean, it's just unfortunate because it's hard for, I think, the right to conceptualize the tyranny that we live under, because it's not operating under the badge of necessarily like, this big government with like a swastika or the hammer and sickle. It's like this ideological tyranny that has tentacles in all of the institutions. And just because those institutions wear the banner of Facebook and Twitter and things like that, instead of just like, the Ministry of Truth, so to speak, or like, the United States of America official Twitter platform. Like, because it's not necessarily affiliated directly with government, I think it's hard for us to realize that like it's still the same. The way that they're intercepting your private communications now because you're doing it voluntarily on their platform would be the same as like, the secret police and the Soviets listening in on your phone calls because you were doing it on, the state company's telephone communication line, things like that. And it's still violating your rights, but it's just in a way that I think is hard for us to detect sometimes.
Well, don't worry, because Facebook has denied these allegations, although gave a couple of conflicting statements. The first one was that these claims are false because they reflect a misunderstanding of how our systems protect people from harm. The second statement, which was completely unprompted, the Facebook spokesperson altered her language to say these claims are, quote, wrong, not false. Just, I don't know. Very curious why you would update that and make sure to tell people that their policy is designed to protect people from harm. All right, we've got some more to come, and we'll take a break. We'll be right back. Yesterday, we brought to you the story of Don Lemon, of course, CNN host Don Lemon, who I would say got quite the demotion because they are canceling his primetime show and putting him on a morning show that gets not a lot of views. Oh, and by the way, with two other broadcasters, two other CNN hosts. But he went on his show to say, look, it's not a demotion. I'm actually very excited about it. And in fact, it's a promotion. Watch.
This is not someone moving me. And by the way, this is not someone saying, you must move to the right, Don Lemon. You must not be so, give so much of your perspective. None of that has happened. All of that is fodder for Twitter, which is not real. So stop it. I was not demoted. None of that. This is an opportunity. This is a promotion. This is an opportunity for me to create something around me. And I get to work with two great ladies.
I feel like his show, Don Lemon, was an opportunity to create something around him. And as it turns out, he sucks, so nobody liked it.
Look, CNN right now, for those of you guys that don't know, Zaslav, who is now this kind of the CEO with Warner, kind of selling off, AT&T selling off their assets, their entertainment assets, that was kind of included. And now you have this big merger with Discovery or Warner Discovery or whatever it's called. And there's been a lot of shaking and moving. I don't think it's less about, hey, or as much about the woke stuff. I think it's more just, hey, maybe internal politics of just, hey, company changes power. But there is a change. There absolutely is a shift. And we knew that coming into it when they were talking specifically about CNN. We remember the cancellation of CNN Plus or whatever. It was Stelter's out of there. As well as just they talked about kind of having it be geared more so towards news. And I do think a lot of that had to do with, you guys don't even, once upon a time, CNN, I'm not going to say that it was ever in the center. No, but it used to not try to pretend, or rather it at least pretended, let's say it was in the center. Now it's like, yeah, we're just basically MSNBC 2.0
right.
is effectively what CNN is right now. So there's a lot of shaking and moving, and I'm interested to see what kind of happens out of that.
Yeah, John.
Yeah, his little monologue there, we refer to that in the industry as coping and seething, as getting BTFO'd. And also, from what I know about Don Lemon, I mean, the whole, I get to work alongside two lovely ladies. It's probably the first time he's ever excited to be around women. But also, the thing is like Tucker Carlson's the most popular news host in the country, and he's also the farthest right. So when you don't have your airports, I guess, see how the ratings really work out
Absolutely.
for you.
And it'll be interesting to see how long he lasts there, because it feels like a very slow descent into just being fired, which couldn't happen to a more deserving person. We'll see you Monday.